There are stories the old ones did not tell to just anyone, stories they kept close, spoken only in low voices late at night when the fire had burned down to embers and the little ones were asleep. Stories about the lights in the sky, about the visitors, about the ones who came down from the stars long before the first ships ever touched these shores. Tonight, sit with me by the fire, and I will tell you what the elders said about the star people. Not to frighten you, and not to make you believe, only to share what was passed down the way it was passed to me, from voices older than any book, under a sky that has not changed in all the time our people have watched it, for our people have always watched the sky. Long before there were telescopes, before there were calendars printed on paper, the old ones knew the stars. They knew them by name. They knew their stories. They followed the great river of light across the night, the one others call the Milky Way, and they knew when the cold would come and when the corn should go into the ground by the turning of the stars alone. The sky was not empty to them. It was full of relatives. And the oldest teaching, kept by many nations across this land, each in their own way, was this: we did not all come from here. Some of the people, the elders said, came down from the stars. They called them the star people, the sky beings, the ones who came from the place where the seven sisters gather, the little cluster of stars you can see on a clear winter night, the ones others call the Pleiades. From there, the old ones said, our first teachers came. They did not come as conquerors. They came as relatives, as teachers. The stories say the star people brought gifts. They brought knowledge of the corn, of the beans, of the squash, the three sisters that fed our people for 1,000 generations. They brought the ways of living in balance. They brought songs and ceremonies and the understanding of the medicine that grows in the earth. And when their teaching was done, the stories say, they went back up the road of light to the stars, and they told our people, watch the sky. We will not be far. We will be watching over you. You do not have to take my word for any of this. Go and look at the rock. All across this land, on canyon walls and hidden overhangs, our ancestors carved what they saw. And among the deer and the handprints and the spirals, you will find them. Tall figures with round heads, beings that do not look like men, with what look like helmets or halos or antennae rising from their heads. Some of these carvings are older than the pyramids. The people who made them did not have a word for spaceship. They carved what they saw the only way they knew how. And what they saw enough to carve it into stone that has lasted 4,000 years. Now, let me tell you some of the things the elders spoke of. The things they kept quiet. They spoke of lights that were not stars. A light that would appear low over the mesa and hold still, too still, brighter than any star, and then move. Not the way a falling star moves, streaking and gone, but slow, deliberate. Moving against the wind, stopping, turning, as though something was guiding it. And then, in an instant, gone. The old ones would see these lights and grow quiet. They knew what they were not, and they had their own ideas about what they were. They spoke of the nights the animals knew first. You would be sitting in the lodge, and the dogs would stop. Not bark. Stop. Go silent and low, ears back, staring at nothing. The horses would grow restless in the dark, pulling at their ropes. And the old people learned to trust the animals, because the animals always knew before the people did. When the dogs went silent like that, the elders said, something had come near that did not belong to this world, and they spoke quietly of the ones who were taken, not often, and never lightly. There are stories in many nations of a person who wandered too far from the fire on a strange bright night and did not come back until dawn, and when they came back, they were changed. They could not say where they had been. Hours had passed that felt like minutes. They remembered a light, and being lifted, and beings, tall and pale and calm, who did not speak with their mouths, but placed thoughts directly into the mind. Some came back frightened, but many, the old ones said, came back not frightened at all. They came back peaceful, as though they had been shown something, as though they had been home. Why would the elders keep these things secret? For the same reason they kept many sacred things secret, because the world outside did not understand. Because a people who had already had so much taken from them, their land, their language, their children, learned to hold what was precious close and speak of it only among those they trusted. To speak of the star people to an outsider was to invite mockery, or worse. So they did not. They kept it by the fire, among family, in the old language, for 100 generations. And only now, as the old ones pass and take so much with them, are a few of these stories finally being spoken aloud. But here is what I want you to understand, because this is the heart of it, and it is where our people see it differently than the world does. The world today, when it speaks of these things, speaks with fear, invaders, abductions, something to be afraid of. But that is not how the old ones saw it. To our people, the star beings were not monsters. They were relatives, family that had gone ahead, that lived among the stars, that came back now and then to check on the ones they had left behind, the way any grandparent watches over the grandchildren they love. Think of how differently that lets you look up at the night sky, not with fear, with belonging. The old ones did not feel small under all those stars. They felt held. They believed that every one of those points of light might be a fire, on a world we cannot see, where relatives we have not met are living and loving and watching this small blue world with the same tenderness we feel when we watch a child sleep. We are not alone, the elders said. We have never been alone. The sky is not a cold and empty place. It is full of family. The stars themselves carried this teaching. Many nations tell of specific star ancestors, of a woman who married a star and went up to live in the sky, of children who became the stars we still see, of whole clans who trace their beginning not to this earth, but to a particular place in the heavens. These were not idle tales told to pass a winter night. They were history, as the old ones understood history. A record kept in story instead of ink, of where the people believed they truly came from. And they came, so many of them believed, from up there. There were signs the star people left behind, the elders said, for those who knew how to read them. The great lines and figures drawn on the earth in some places, so large you can only see the whole of them from high in the sky. Who were they drawn for, the old ones would ask, if not for someone who could look down from above? The strange skill of the ancient builders, who moved stones no ordinary people could move, who aligned their temples and their mounds to the stars with a precision we can barely match today. The old ones did not think their ancestors did all of this alone. They believed they had help, help that came from the sky and gave knowledge and went home again. And the encounters did not stop with the ancestors. This is the part the elders were most careful about. The lights still come. Ask the people who live out on the wide reservations, far from the city glow, under some of the darkest and clearest skies left in this country. Ask them what they have seen. And if they trust you, and only if they trust you, some of them will grow quiet and glance at the door and tell you about the light that paced their truck down an empty desert road one night and then shot straight up faster than any thought. About the craft that hung silent over the canyon, big as a stadium, with no sound at all, no sound, which is the thing they always say, the silence of it, the wrongness of something that large making no sound. About the being seen at the edge of the firelight, tall and thin, watching, and then simply not there. The elders have a rule about these things, and it is a wise one. You do not chase them. You do not go looking, calling out, trying to bring them close the way some restless people do now. Because not everything that comes down from the sky, the old ones warned, comes with good intent, any more than everyone who walks this earth does. There are relatives, and there are others, and a person who goes seeking contact without respect, without ceremony, without knowing what they are inviting, is like a child wandering off into the dark, calling out to strangers. The old ones did not fear the sky, but they respected it. There is a difference, and it is an important one. Let me tell you one of the old stories, the way it was told to me, so you can hear how far back this goes. Many nations tell some version of it. The story of the woman who married a star. A young woman, they say, who looked up one night at a bright star and wished, the way young people do, that she could be with something so beautiful. And in the morning she woke in the sky world, married to a star being in a country above the clouds she had only dreamed of. She lived there a long while, and she was happy, and she learned the ways of the sky people who were kind to her. But in time she grew homesick for her mother and her people below. And the sky people, because they loved her, let her come home, and lowered her back down the long road of light. She came back full of what she had seen, and the knowledge she brought, the old ones say, stayed with the people for generations. That is not a story about the stars being far away. That is a story about the stars being close enough to marry into, close enough to be family. Now here is an account of the more recent kind, the kind the elders told only among themselves. There was a young man, long ago but not so long, who was out on the mesa alone at dusk, bringing the sheep in. And the light came. It came down low over the far ridge, and it was not the sun, for the sun had already gone, and it was not a star, for it was too low and far too bright, and it did not flicker. It came toward him, slow and silent, and the sheep, they said, went still as stones, and the dog pressed itself flat against his leg and would not move. The young man stood there, and the light stood there, close now, humming in a way he felt in his teeth more than heard. And then, he said, he felt something look at him, not eyes, a knowing. Something inside that light knew him, weighed him, and was not unkind. And then it lifted straight up, without a sound, faster than a thought, and it was gone, and the stars came back, and the sheep began to move again as if nothing had happened. He came down off that mesa, and he did not speak of it for 40 years. He told it finally to his grandchildren by a fire near the end, and he said the strangest thing about it was not the fear. It was that afterward, for the rest of his life, he never once felt alone, no matter how empty the land around him was. The medicine people, the ones who carried the deepest knowledge, had things to say about why the star people came, and it was not idle curiosity. They believed the sky beings were watching how we live, and they believed that in these times the star people had grown troubled. Look at what we do, the old ones said. Look at how we treat the earth that feeds us, the water that gives us life, the air, the animals, one another. The star beings, the medicine people believed, gave our ancestors the teachings of balance for a reason. They gave us the corn and the ceremonies and the way of walking gently so that we would keep this world well. And when the visitors come now, some of the wise ones said, they come partly to remind us. To ask, without words, the way they always spoke, have you forgotten what we taught you? Are you keeping this world the way we asked? The lights in the sky, in this understanding, are not only relatives visiting, they are relatives worried about us, come to see whether their grandchildren are taking care of the home they were given. The old ones noticed, too, that it was often the children who saw them most clearly. A child would speak, plainly, the way children do, of the tall, kind friend who came to the window at night, the one made of soft light, who was not frightening at all, who only watched and smiled and was gone by morning. The grown people would tell the child it was a dream. But the elders were not so quick to say so. They believed the very young still remembered where they had come from, still had the door open a crack, before the world taught them to close it. And so the star people came gently to the children, the old ones said, because a child would not be afraid, and a child would not chase, and a child would simply love them back, the way a child loves everything, without suspicion. There are grown men and women today, gray-haired now, who will tell you quietly that they remember such a friend from when they were small, and that they have never, in all their years, been quite able to convince themselves it was only a dream. So what are we to make of all this, sitting here by the fire so many years later? I am not going to tell you what to believe. The old ones never told me what to believe. They only told me what they had seen, and what their grandparents had seen, and their grandparents before them, back and back into a time before this country had a name. And they asked me to do one thing, to keep watching the sky, not with fear, with wonder, and with respect. Because here is what a long life teaches you, and what the elders knew in their bones. The world is far stranger, and far larger, and far more full of relatives than we are comfortable admitting. We like to think we are the only ones. We like to think this small world is the whole of it. But the old ones, sitting out under that enormous sky night after night for 10,000 years, never made that mistake. They knew better. They looked up at the river of stars, and they did not see emptiness. They saw the campfires of relatives too far away to visit, but never too far away to watch over us. So the next time the night is clear, go outside. Get away from the lights of town if you can. Let your eyes adjust until the faint stars come out, and then the fainter ones behind them, until the whole sky is powdered with light, and that great river runs across the middle of it. And remember what the old ones said, that some of those lights are fires, that some of our family lives up there, that they came here once, long ago, and taught us how to live, and told us to watch for them, and that every so often, on a bright and silent night, when the dogs go quiet and a light moves against the wind, they still come, just to see how their grandchildren are getting on. That is what the elders kept secret, not because it was shameful, because it was sacred. And now you know it too. Guard it the way they did, with respect, and pass it on some day to someone you trust, by a fire like this one. Thank you for sitting with me tonight, and for listening to the old ones through me. If this stirred something in you, some memory, or some wonder, or a light you once saw and never told anyone about, stay a while longer, for there are more stories waiting by this fire. And when you go out tonight and look up, remember, you are not looking at an empty sky. You are looking at family. Walk gently, keep watching, and never forget that we have never, not once, been alone.